Next session is will be carried over by our next guest, who is young and energetic and dynamic. If we just listen to her introduction, you'll be able to know. Uh, Dr. Dipti Taneja, ma'am.
Hello, everybody.
Ma'am. Just a second. Just I checked it whether you are online. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to introduce Dr. Dipti Taneja. She teaches in the Department of Economics, Delhi, College of Arts and Commerce, University of Delhi. She is a gold medalist in Masters of Economics program. Her main areas of interest and research are environmental economics, development economics, and economics of public sector. And she has also been awarded a UGC major project for her research in the area of environmental economics. She has been a recipient of Asha Sablok Gold Medal Award for the best paper presented in 93rd Annual Conference of the Indian Economic Association. She is an associate editor for the Indian Economics Journal, Special Issues, and is also managing editor of the Bihar Economic Journal. Dr. Dipti Taneja is a public information officer and joint secretary of Indian Economic Association and represented India as a council member in the International Economic Association's 17th World Congress in Jordan in 2014. She is the joint secretary of Economic Association of Bihar, and at the college level too is entrusted with various administrative responsibilities like member of IQAC, co-convener, NAC steering committee, convener of entrepreneurial cell and women's cell, as well as being an advisor to the Students' Council, besides being convener and member of various staff council committees. She is also a resource person for the UGC CEC lecture series that is aired at the national television, DD Gyan Darshan. When I was going through her personal profile, I found that she also has won an award at the MS Radio Jockey RJ contest of Radio City 91.1 FM and became a guest RJ there for a week in October 2009. She is very well versed with English language, Hindi language. Actually, we will be knowing this things, but a very rare language, our mother language, that is Sanskrit. She is very well versed in this language too. She is a multi-dimensional personality that we have today, and we are very pleasured to have her with us. So I request Dr. Dipti Taneja ma'am to carry over the session. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you and welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for inviting me over. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Hello to everybody. This is a new way that we are interacting with each other. It is so nice to see all of you again, though on a digital platform. Virtually, we are seeing each other today. So I will, since it has already started a bit late, I will immediately move on to my presentation. Sir, can you make me the host so that I can share the screen with everybody?
Already. All
right, sir. I will just share my screen now. All right. Very good afternoon to one and all. As I said, thank you so very much for giving me this opportunity. I will be speaking primarily on the impact of COVID on the labor issue. Since the speaker before me, Shri Ravindra ji, gave a very lucid presentation on what are the impacts on MSME, what are the benefits that the MSME is going to get. So I really won't focus a lot of attention on that. I will straight away move on to the labor migrant issues that we are talking about, and all these things that the government is talking about for picking up the manufacturing sector. So what is going to be the impact of this COVID thing, a new complex phenomenon that we all are witnessing now, on the manufacturing sector and on this labor issue that we are seeing and witnessing almost every day. So as we all know, this is a tendency which we have all witnessed the world over, which is exactly very, very new for this generation. We had only read about certain things like the Spanish flu, the Great Depression, only in our textbooks. This kind of a phenomenon and the kind of massive impact it is going to have the world over on the economies, on the sociology, societies, everything. It is something which is unprecedented, which we have witnessed in our time. If we talk exactly about the economies right now, the 2020 growth projections for India are really very dismal, except for World Bank. As you can see, we have had very bad predictions from various international agencies. The UN Economic Forum talks of a growth for 2020 for India at 1.2%. The International Monetary Fund pegs it at 1.9%. Moody's is slightly reasonable at 2.5%. World Bank is highly optimistic, though honestly, I really am not, has pegged it at 4.8 to 5%. And Barclays has given it to a zero growth figure for 2020 for India. This is the kind of growth projections that we are facing. So the main crux for this is that if the economy has to pick up, the manufacturing sector has to pick up. So it is the manufacturing sector which is going to be at the you can say center point, focal point of this entire growth dimensions and dynamics that we are talking about. So if you talk about the growth projections, as you see, the data released by the NSSO on May 12 itself shows that the index of industrial production has contracted an annual 16.7%. This is the worst ever figure in 39 years of India's growth trajectory. The CMIE data on employment is again at a very, very dismal and low level. We know that in the pre-COVID times also, India was really not having a very handsome employment growth figures. When the employment was already at an abysmally low level, compounded by this COVID impact that we have seen, the lockdown, which has already stretched to over 50 days now, the industry is really not picking up, manufacturing not available. Whatever labor was there is migrating back. The reverse migration is what we are seeing. Amidst all this, expect the employment to pick up will be a far-fetched dream, and we are really facing the worst ever manufacturing and employment crisis that the economy has seen so far in its entire economic history. This, as I mentioned in the beginning also, is a very complex phenomenon. Earlier, we have seen that all our economic recessions, not just in India, but the world over, have either been driven by the demand side or by supply side. Like we had the supply shocks, the oil shocks, or due to demand paucity. So whatever economic impulses that had to be given by the government were in the form of tackling that one problem, that you increase the credit flow, you increase the liquidity availability in the economy, then your demand problem was to be taken care of. If you increase the supply shocks could be taken care of. But in the present situation, we have had impacts on the demand as well as on the supply side. This is not going to be something which we say, okay, this is a demand-driven problem or this is a supply-driven problem. This phenomenon is going to impact your demand because the incomes have gone down, the purchasing parities have gone down, the purchasing powers with the people have gone down, the industries have been shut down. Then you're going to have the same impact on the supply side with the industries shut down and going to have staggered working hours picking up in the kind of manner that we are seeing now. Again, I am still hopeful that the government does not go in for a second wave of lockdown, because as you see in the last 2-3 days since the lockdown 4 has slightly eased the norms, we have had 5,000 plus figures, which is the reported, recorded, calculated figures of COVID-19 patients that India is witnessing. So considering that we do not shut down again, still to expect the economy to pick up and the supply and the manufacturing to pick up is something going to be a very, very slow process. But since the speaker before me, Shri Ravindraji, has already focused a lot on the Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme that was there and the credit flow that the MSMEs have now been given, I'm really not going to focus on that at all. I am going to focus specifically on the labor issues, that why the kind of treatment that is being meted out to our labor, what is going to be the impact on the labor psyche and the manufacturing sector. So with this backdrop, I will move ahead. Very specifically, I will just spend a few minutes on the industry-wise impact that has been expected. This is a table which is the next slides. I'll share them subsequently. This is based on Dun and Bradstreet's assumptions which have been compiled through various data sources like Ministry of Commerce, MSMEs, and DNB's own survey as well. The legends that they have used is that what is the impact on certain industries and what is going to be the recovery period. So if you see drugs and pharmaceuticals, obviously they are expected to have the minimal impact. If anything which is going off shelf these days are the drugs and pharmaceutical company products, and the recovery period is also going to be short term. Rest, if you look at all other industries, from livestock to retail to wholesale, textiles, logistics, metals, automotive, entertainment, the impacts are either severe or high, very little on moderate. Now, moderate here is also on the assumption that we are taking textiles as necessity items. Once you talked about the high brand luxury textiles, obviously the impact is going to be severe. But if you ask me to go and purchase an L&D product or whatever the high brand products, I will think twice before buying a wallet or a purse itself, which is going to cost me 10,000, 15,000 rupees. So entertainment, obviously, with the malls closed, even when they open up, people will think twice, because one picnic, one family excursion of 4 to a mall or an entertainment zone or a movie costs nothing less than 5,000 rupees these days. Then if you see gems and jewelry, tourism, hospitality, all of these are having severe and long-term impacts. So if we take gems and jewelry, tourism, hospitality, and the entertainment sector as the luxury sectors, among the necessities, it is basically MSME which is having the highest impact. And that is why, as Professor Ravindra's and as Dr. Ravindra's presentation also talked about, the most emphasis of the Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme is on credit availability to the MSME. The primary crux of that entire scheme, the entire government program, is to revive the MSMEs. As you must have seen also from a number of schemes that Ravindraji talked about, most of these schemes are credit enhancing schemes. Though the government has spent almost 10% of GDP, which is almost fifth in the world figures if you talk about the government expenditures for helping out the citizens during this time of COVID. Yet I feel that most of these programs are aimed at credit availability to the MSME sector. As if you see out from the gist of these schemes that Ravindraji talked about, they are basically aimed at enhancing credit availability of funds with the people to uplift the manufacturing and the industrial sector. But my problem is, my take on this entire thing is that most steps are needed, especially for boosting the production and ensuring output growth. We cannot expect that the credit alone will help if the business viability has gone down. The payments are not forthcoming, the industries have been closed. Once the industry was opened also, the kind of gas leakage we experienced in the LG plant was, rather than not just being abysmally problematic for the human life, the human innocent lives have paid the cost of it. These are the economic problems also. That industry, you cannot just shut them down and then you open them the next day and you expect all things to be normal just because credit is available. So if this package is an attempt to break this halt in production process without actually working out the measures to increase the production, there's bound to be an inflationary pressure as well. So what I feel is needed is a comprehensive policy measure which will require certain kind of tax holidays to manufacturers and wage subsidies. These are the two elements which, in my opinion, are missing from the Atmanirbhar Bharat package. When the government is anyway spending such a huge outlay to provide credit, why can it at the same time not provide certain kind of tax holidays to take care of the manufacturing class and wage subsidies to simultaneously take care of the working class as well? Why have this disparity kind of a situation, this stepmotherly treatment to our workers, which we are facing now? So the most important question with this reverse migration that we are seeing is, how do you expect the production to even pick up? I say, fine, credit is available, tax holidays are available, but how do you expect the capitalist class, the bourgeois class in Marxist words, to carry out production without this proletariat class, the laborer class, which is the kind of alarming trend of reverse migration that we are seeing? In the next few slides, I'm sharing certain newspaper clips with you, which I'm sure you all are seeing every day. In fact, Professor Kamble in the morning itself shared certain newspaper shots with me, because that is the harsh reality we all are facing every day. This is the kind of situation we are seeing. People have been left on road like stepchildren. There are no parents. There is nobody to take care of them. Governments are fighting with each other. UP is fighting with MP. MP is fighting with Center. Center is fighting with Delhi. Delhi is fighting with Haryana. Andhra is fighting with Telangana. Karnataka is fighting with Tamil. I mean, the kind of situations we are facing. Are we even talking about Indian citizens? My citizens, my people, my worker, and then the kind of stepmotherly treatment that we are talking about. All these slides are telling us the apathetic situation that the laborer are facing when they're going back home. The Shramik trains that have been started, they also the kind of you can say mara mari horde jo chal rahi hai, the kind of problem that they are facing, no social distancing norm. God forbid if one of them is a asymptomatic COVID carrier, everybody else's life is jeopardized as well. So these are the kind of situations we are facing. Then the people who are going back home, the accidents we are facing, you can say adding salt to the wounds. One, they are facing problems, and that salt, the wounds are being further added salt with because of all these other problems, that frequent accidents are being met. And seriously, I would say, I can show a number of other slides as well, but I restricted myself because this is what we all are anyway seeing every day in the newspapers. We have miles to go before they sleep. They have miles to go before they sleep. I will now talk about the impact which this reverse migration is going to have on the economic activity. There are 4 pressing issues which come to my mind. There can be, of course, more which can come to your mind, since this is something very new which we all are experiencing. But the first 4 which come to my mind, the most pressing 4, I'll pick them up one by one. First is the kind of treatment that is being meted out to the people who are going back home today. Do you think that these laborers will come back? Will their psyche permit them to come back when on the line hotels they are paying exorbitant prices? The truckers are paying exorbitant prices for the food. Health is a far-fetched dream. They are walking on foot. Shramik trains, despite every government which is claiming, every party which is claiming we are footing the bill, we all know the harsh reality. It is the people themselves who are lucky enough to get the ticket who are footing the bill for their own tickets. Then this very news from day before yesterday, that the migrants who have gone back to Bihar, 1 in 4 migrant is testing positive for COVID-19. So with this kind of psyche, the people back home are going to think, we have gone to city, we have jeopardized our own lives. We have become, the people in the villages were safe. That is how this illiterate class is going to take the psyche as, that people back home were safe. We were in city, we have not been taken care of. We are the ones who have been infected by this disease, and they have gone back. Now they have tested positive. They will be put into quarantine homes. No casting comments on the kind of facilities, but we know the kind of problems that the quarantine homes itself are facing. To explain to this illiterate class that you have to be quarantined, you have to stay put, is something a dismally difficult task in itself. So with this kind of psyche, do you really expect the migrant laborers to come back? And without them coming back, even by providing them credit, even by opening up the industry, how do you expect the manufacturing to carry on? We are a labor-intensive economy. Most of our factories and industries are still labor-intensive. Even the ones which are mechanized, we still require labor to run those machines. So first important bearing is the worker's psyche, the laborer's psyche. Are they going to come back? And if and when they what is the government planning? Government is only talking about now. What is the long-term plan? Do you have a plan in place to bring this labor class back? I would say no. Moving on to the next issue. The next issue which comes to my mind is, as you know, the 3 states of Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and Gujarat have already come up with a number of policies that dilute labor laws, basically to provide incentive to the industries. Fine, understood that you want to provide industries incentive to so as not to have these inflexible labor laws. Now, before I go on to the details, first let me just explain what these labor laws are. As you can see from this clipping, sorry, I'll go back. As you can see from this clipping, we really do not have a specific labor laws. They are more than 200 state and central laws, which together make up the labor laws in our country. And most of these labor laws are often criticized as being inflexible because they act as an impediment for increasing the manufacturing output, because of which, as you know, we, even in the organized sector, we had majority of the workers working in the informal sector. Organized and informal, I hope you know the distinction. The organized sector was there, the very much registered firms, but then they were not employing workers with a contract so as to avoid these laws. But the ones which were there with contracts were bound by the labor laws. Now, by diluting these laws, these so many laws do not remain laws anymore. The industrialists are not really bound to take any of these into cognizance when labor issues and labor disputes are to be settled. Only these 5 laws have been excluded, which have not been diluted. So as you know, these you can say bonded labor, these are the ones which were very basic, you can say basic lifeline for these laborers, which have not been excluded. The rest, all other laws have been diluted. Even with the Allahabad court, in the Honorable Allahabad court intervening in UP's matter, the labor laws dilution has not been reversed. It is only the working hours which have been reduced to 8 from the proposed earlier scheme of 12 hours. Now, what are the likely impacts of this? Most employment will effectively turn informal. Yes, expected to bring the wages down, which on the demand side, because these are the people who are the buyers as well. If they are the one who's the working class, they're also the one who's the buying class. So with this, the purchasing power of people going down, how do you expect the demand to go down? So this will cause a further depression in an already depressed economy, making the overall recovery process very slower and further impact the labor psyche, that with they also having the knowledge that the labor laws have been diluted, the wages are abysmally low, the working conditions are not conducive. Do you really expect them to come back and work for these states? I have my serious doubts that they're going to come back and work, because they would be highly reluctant to come and work back with such diluted labor laws. Now, then it brings me to this question, which I started on with earlier also. Could the government have done something else? And since it is only the 3 state governments which have yet explored this route, maybe this can provide an alternative policy option to the center. I would say that instead of creating these exploitative conditions for workers, what the center can actually think of is allocate a certain percentage of GDP towards wage sharing as well. That will take care of the bourgeois class as well as the proletariat class. The workers with the knowledge that yes, the working conditions are not so bad, the wages are not abysmally low. Can I please request you not to tamper with my PPT, please? The working conditions not abysmally low, they would really not be as reluctant to come back. So the center can take care of the industrialist concerns as well, rather than just providing them with credit, cheaper credit. This is what the governments in so many other countries have also done. That is, as you can see from this snapshot that I've just shared. Moving now on to the third issue. As you know, that initially the MHA order was passed that the workers will have to be paid salaries, full salaries in fact, during this period of lockdown. As you know, the Supreme Court has virtually reversed that order. The MHA's order in itself, in practical aspects, stand cancelled. Again, it is you can say more salt, even you can say spices to the wound that have been added, that the workers will not be paid now for the period of this lockdown. I do not say that this is, you can force the industrialists, because of course the industrialist class also is not having a money plant in their house. But then without the government providing them any tax holidays or any wage subsidies, it is going to be unfair to the industrialists also. But then it is a double whammy, triple whammy on the working and the labor class, who are absolutely not getting proper rations also, and on top of it, not getting paid also. As you all must be knowing also, various trade unions have even come out with calls for strikes. Whatever little industries have opened also, today also there's a call for strike, day after tomorrow there's a call for strike, because trade unions are resenting and are highly against such, you can say, inflexible kind of laws and rules and judgments that are being passed, which are totally labor unfriendly. Fourthly, the issue that comes to my mind, after waging a big battle, having walked kilometers on foot, then the kind of problem that we see, the states are refusing them entry. I have just put up one newspaper heading here that AP refuses entry to people because they are not yet clear as to what the Telangana government wants. Telangana government has refused entry to their own workers, their own migrants who are coming from Maharashtra or from Andhra or from even Karnataka. Now, with this kind of a situation, Odisha, there was another information. Odisha had not allowed the Shramik Express only to enter its borders. What is the kind of situation we are facing? Are we facing a country within a country? Are we really talking about Indian citizens here? Every state is behaving in its own manner. Ye mere bacche, tumhare bacche, these are my children, these are your children. These are my favorite children, these are my stepchildren. What do you expect the worker to act like and behave like in this kind of a stepmotherly treatment that has been given to them? So this brings me to most two pertinent questions. With this kind of a 4 issues that I've just brought about, I am going to now talk about what are we talking about the future once the industries pick up also. Don't you think this kind of a trend and this kind of a psyche that we have now entered into, the parties fighting over themselves, the states acting like independent nations among themselves? What are we talking about? Indian citizens, AP citizens, UP citizens, Delhi citizens? This is not the way things have to work. We all are Indian citizens. You must have also come across newspaper reports which are talking about rations to be issued only on showing their state issued ration card. Come on, why were the laborers forced to migrate in the first place? Because food was not available to them, wages were not available to them. Then this kind of situation that they are facing. So what future holds for them? I feel it is going to be like a double-edged sword. One, the issues that I've talked about. How do you expect the manufacturing and the industries to pick up without the labor being available? And two, which unfortunately no political party or state is thinking about right now. If the labor refuses to come back, what are you going to do with such surplus labor in your own hometown? What are you really going to do with them? Are you going to have more stress on the already stressed agriculture with the rural non-farm sector virtually in shambles? Where do you expect this extra labor to be absorbed or them to be fed or paid? So nobody is thinking ahead in time. The kind of situation that the laborers are facing now is going to be like a double-edged sword in future. So they are going to have a very long-lasting and sharp impact on their minds, who are the backbone of our economy. So the government will have to think for the industrialists as well as for the workers if they are hoping to have any positive impact on the mindset of the working force, the labor, migrant laborers, in the hope of reviving the manufacturing sector. So what I feel is that announcement of a wage package to serve the interests of both the bourgeois and the proletariat class can present the only viable solution for the government. Besides this, the government can also think of other kind of measures besides, of course, the credit availability that we have talked about again and again. One can be extension on the utility and social security payments that can take care of the working class. Then partial payment or delayed payments of the GST that can take care of the industrialist class. Enhanced credit access that has been very well taken care of in the Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme. And finally, competitive financial incentives like tax holidays and preferential tax rates, which can help the industrialist class and make them even think like the Asian Paint. I have not shared that newspaper clipping with you. Like the Asian Paint, which is going against the tide, they have decided to rather increase their salaries, the working salaries, so as to provide incentives and attract the best of the labor force. And if this kind of a balance is what the government is going to have, then in this kind of a situation, we can even think of attracting the industries, the industrial houses, the production houses, which are moving out of China due to the anti-China sentiment, which is now prevalent. And rather than going to Vietnam or other, you can say, safe shores that they are facing, they can be lured to come to India with this kind of a comprehensive policy package if the government thinks of providing. So with this, I would like to come to the conclusion of my presentation that the next few years are definitely going to see a fundamental change in how the manufacturing and industries operate. We will have to respond swiftly, and structural reforms are also inevitable. I have listed certain structural reforms which government can take up subsequently. I'll be sharing my PPT also with you, so you can have a look at them. And then finally, we have to think and move away. The Prime Minister's call for vocal for local has to be understood in the right perspective. It does not mean that we are talking about doing away with FDIs. It is talking about promoting the Make in India industries here, rather than just away from the assembly line manufacturing. We can think about the Make in India incentive, of course, with the help of FDI. Local for vocal does not mean that you think of doing away with FDIs. In the present situation, especially, no country, India definitely cannot think of picking up manufacturing without the industrial sector being helped with the FDI. So that is how we can actually make Atmanirbhar Bharat a success. From Prime Minister's call from Jan to Jahan, I would go even further, making it Vasudev Kutumbam, as Sir introduced, Sanskrit being one of my favorite languages. Vasudev Kutumbam, let the world be your playground. We all have to act together with the world if we want the economies to revive and the COVID impact to be mitigated. I will just take a few minutes and read out this very heart-touching poem that I came across. Sorry. Will you walk this walk with me? I have helped you build your house, dear sir. Can you share my agony? Just a few steps, not very far, as the blisters are there on my feet. Can you share a sip or two with me? In fact, I would not even read this out. I will just share the screen for a minute. Read this heart-touching poem. I really do not know who the poet is, but this will bring tears to your eyes about the apathy and the agony that this labor class is being tormented to. Sharing the next part of it. I will read the last few paragraphs only. Snap your fingers when you need them next, and they will walk this path once more to build your home or lift your load or mop your marble floor. Migrant guest, you are like God himself, remembered only in our need. All other times, not seen, not heard, just camouflaged by greed. These images will haunt us. The visuals take a toll. The hopeless eyes, the tired feet, a nation without a soul. Atmanirbhar, too big a word, tag along my path with me. I'm vocal and I'm local, but no one seems to see. Alas, I'm local as well as vocal, but no one seems to see. With this, I would end my presentation with just a small silent prayer to the Almighty to help the world out of this crisis, health as well as economic. May God help us. May our Almighty help us. Thank you so much.
things to be said.
Sir, I will just make you the host again.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Just a second. How do I do that?
Click on it and
So are you the host again?
yeah, ma'am.
Fine. Yes, sir.
Now, there are a few questions asked, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Please.
We would like you to answer them. Is rehabilitation policy of labor of the government of India proper? What do you suggest?
No. There is absolutely no rehabilitation policy of the government in place. To call it proper or improper would be dependent on the fact, so the voice is echoing.
Yeah.
It will be dependent on the fact if there was a rehabilitation policy in place. Unfortunately, there is no rehabilitation policy. The workers have been left on their own in the lurch, in the dark, to fend for themselves. There is no rehabilitation policy. There is no even going back home policy. Rehabilitation is a long-term policy. No government, no political party has that in place right now. Very unfortunate.
There's one more question we'll take and we'll just wind up the session. When things are going to be normal, means it will be in few weeks, few months, or few years it takes. Because there's a curiosity on the sides.
If you talk about when things are going to be normal from the health perspective, I am no health expert. WHO, if you believe WHO reports, this is a new normal we have to live with. If you talk about things normal on the psychological perspective, again, it's my fingers crossed what the government is, what the psyche is going to be of us as well as of the people who are out on roads. And if you talk about the economic normalcy, what normalcy is going to be the new normalcy, I have my doubts. It's not going to be a in very near future. No, it's going to be a really long-term process for the manufacturing and the industry to pick up and the economy to pick up.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your valuable responses as well as your valuable time. We have come to one more quality of yours, that is you have a poetic mind as well as a poetic heart. So I congratulate you on all these achievements. Actually, being a very young at a very young age, you have achieved all those things. So we'll be expecting your cooperation in future also.
Most welcome,
and
sir.
We'll be inviting you many times for this webinars. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Pleasure is all mine, sir. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience, and hope things become